Suzuki Swift has been a worldwide sales success with some 2 million units sold. Its combination of cheeky styling, meticulous build quality and zippy performance has won it many friends despite some pretty tough European competition.
More than 2 million global sales later, who can blame Suzuki for sticking to a winning formula with the launch of the all-new Swift? The new car looks very much like its predecessor, but is that really a problem? Before 2008, Suzuki was a motorcycle in the South African motoring psyche. Sure, a small number of Suzuki SUVs were imported locally during the 1980s and early 90s, but for most of us, the S of Suzuki was linked to the two-wheeled world.
Fast forward to June 2008 and the official launch of Suzuki Auto South Africa. And spearheading that launch was this car, the original Swift, a subcompact hatchback with an established track record of sales success and a long list of international accolades.
The Swift was up against some tough and well-established competition here, including the Volkswagen Polo, the Toyota Yaris, the Renault Clio and the Opel Corsa. But it didn't take long for South African motorists to catch on, and by February last year, sales had already passed the 4,000 unit mark. Those figures may appear insignificant in the context of the 2 million global sales total achieved by the Swift, but they do indicate a noteworthy growing local fan base for the Japanese marque's automotive products, of which the Swift is one of the leading examples. This week, a brand new Swift arrived on local shores, but in aesthetic terms, it reflects an approach that is so cautious, so evolutionary, that it's not easy to tell old and new apart. In fact, one gets the sense that the Swift designers were almost scared to change what wasn't broken in the first place, as the classic saying goes.
It means that the new Swift looks very much like the old Swift. The same cheeky grin, the same concise shape, the same agile presence. But if you really know your Swifts from your Swallows, you will notice some very real differences.
The new Swift has grown in size. It's taller, wider and longer than before, although its chunky, wieldy proportions have been retained. The tracks are wider and the wheelbase is longer, allowing a more spacious interior and better overall packaging. The exterior detailing is more distinctive, ensuring an unmistakably more contemporary appearance. The headlight and taillight clusters are more pronounced, with stronger shapes and more bright work, while the extensive color coding creates visual cohesion. Larger wheels with a fresh design and wider low-profile tires emphasize the new Swift's more planted stance.
Step into the cabin of the new Swift and you immediately notice how much lighter, how much more spacious and how much airier it actually feels. The material's certainly a step up from the previous model and the impression is definitely smarter. There's also more legroom, which is a welcome improvement, although it still isn't particularly generous.
The hues and textures aren't that inventive or inspired either, but they are smart enough for any occasion and tangible quality is impressive. Dialing in just the right driving position is easily achieved, while the standard equipment list is comprehensive. It ranges from aircon and power steering to remote central locking, a trip computer and a height-adjustable driver's seat. Also part of the deal in this GLS model are leather trim for the reach and height-adjustable steering wheel, an MP3-compatible CD receiver with USB socket and keyless entry and operation. The exterior and interior treatment is only one aspect of the latest Swift package, however. In fact, the under-the-skin changes are much more extensive than the styling would suggest. The wider front and rear tracks, as well as the longer wheelbase, suggest more stable, predictable road manners.
One of the biggest differences is here under the bonnet, where the previous 1.5 litre engine has been replaced by a new, smaller 1.4 litre engine. Now Suzuki says this engine is not only more eco-friendly, but also has lower internal friction, so performance should be similar, but in practice it doesn't feel quite as zesty.
It's also more fuel efficient. Suzuki claims a combined cycle fuel consumption figure of 5.5 litres per 100 kilometers and a CO2 emissions rating of 132 grams per kilometer. Power and torque output have dropped slightly to 70 kilowatts and 130 newton meters respectively. As before, the default transmission choice is a 5-speed manual gearbox that features a smoother shift action. There's also a 4-speed automatic. The Suzuki enjoys tackling the twisties and always feels tidy and composed even when pressing on. The electric power steering has a crisp edge that can be too keen, but turn-in is sharp and effortless.
The new Swift is not a hot hatch, but it is brisk enough in straight line terms. The 0 to 100 time here 10.9 seconds, top speed 170 kilometers an hour. Looking at the automatic, that one needs 12.3 seconds for the 0 to 100, the top speed 165 kilometers an hour, and it just isn't quite as sharp as this vehicle.
In practice, the Swift is as adept zipping through treacly traffic as it is tackling longer distances. You'll need to make enthusiastic use of the gearbox to keep the momentum going, but that adds to the overall driving experience. Ride comfort is a further highlight. The suspension setup dials out most of the dips and bumps, yet still allows clear communication between car and driver. The result is that elusive seat-to-the-pants driving experience so often blunted in contemporary designs.
It's a feather in the cap of modern automotive technology that a larger car with a smaller engine can still be as entertaining and fun to drive as this latest Swift, which of course begs the question whether in real terms we need anything more than the Swift provides.
In a world increasingly displaying the worrying effects of global warming and dwindling oil reserves, the buying down trend is expected to gain momentum, ramping up demand for smaller, cleaner cars. Swapping that gas guzzler for the smaller, sexier Suzuki may well be an inspired decision. A smaller, cleaner, more efficient engine makes greener sense, but also means slightly reduced power and torque outputs. Still, the Swift retains the zesty and involving character of its predecessor, linked to good spec and solid build. However, don't expect it to tackle the hot hatch brigade.